Over the span of 3 years together, my partner, Eliza, remained haunted by her first love. In her home, there was a secluded chamber, a vow she upheld for her initial affection. She promised that as long as he ever returned, there would always be a sanctuary for him within her dwelling. Time and again, she chose him over me. The final time, I left her only a message to end our relationship before vanishing without a trace. I bore no animosity towards him, for in comparison to Eliza, I wasn't superior. Eliza embarked on a relentless quest to find me, eventually leading her to the cemetery. There, amidst the graves, she uncovered the underlying reality of our situation. With eyes tinted red, she gestured towards a monochrome photograph of someone bearing an 80% resemblance to her and confronted me. "Daniel, tell me, who crosses your mind every time you gaze at me?" On Eliza's birthday, I invited a few of her friends to our place to orchestrate a surprise celebration for her. As the festivities reached their zenith, everyone encouraged us to share a kiss. "Eliza, you're fortunate to have such a thoughtful partner." They cheered. Eliza met my eyes, her gaze sparkling, and slowly leaned in. I bowed my head to reciprocate, and just as our friends applauded, the door abruptly flung open. A man, drenched from head to toe, stood at the entrance. Eliza stood motionless. Turning towards the doorway, I recognized a face that resembled mine about 60%. The man called out Eliza's name softly, affectionate and familiar. Eliza was momentarily paralyzed, and once she regained her composure, she remarked, "Why are you soaked? Quickly, go change your clothes." Our friends reacted swiftly, addressing him naturally. "Marco, what brings you back? Finished your fun?" The men present looked taken aback, but managed a faint smile. "Long time no see." Eliza's focus remained fixed on him, offering me no acknowledgement. I was about to inquire about his identity when Marco made his way upstairs to the perpetually locked room, a place Eliza had repeatedly insisted I never approach. Without hesitation, Marco retrieved a key and effortlessly unlocked it. When Marco re-emerged, he had already changed his attire and casually took a seat at the dining table. Our inebriated friends placed their hands on his shoulders. "Marco, stay longer this time. Eliza's home always has a space for you. How lucky to have such unwavering support. Why don't you two just get married?" Eliza cleared her throat lightly and moved closer to me, attempting to alleviate the tension. "Daniel, thank you so much for celebrating my birthday today." The scent of lily of the valley enveloped me, yet I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. I had always known Eliza held on to an unforgettable first love, Marco. When Eliza's business was first established, Marco had quit his lucrative job abroad to steadfastly support her. Even after his departure several years ago, Eliza's friends continued to hold him in high regard, reminiscing about old times with genuine camaraderie. As I attempted to eat, my appetite had vanished. Their celebration continued until late evening, with heavy rain pouring outside by the end. Ultimately, only the three of us remained inside. Eliza's face flushed from the alcohol, her head affectionately resting on Marco's shoulder, while I felt invisible. "I'll take you to the hotel. I'm not leaving." Marco's voice was icy. "That room is mine. You said so." No matter what, there would always be a place for me in her life. I felt like a disregarded observer, overlooked by both. Eliza, speechless, sought solace in me. "Let him stay. The rain is worsening outside, just for one night." She glanced at me, her eyes flickering with a hint of remorse. "Okay, Eliza, I'm sorry." I pressed my lips together and retreated upstairs, passing by them. That night, sleep eluded me. The relentless rain persisted, and a sudden thunderclap jolted me awake. Instinctively, I reached out to hold someone beside me, but my arms met only emptiness and coldness. A sliver of light seeped through the door's crack. Peering outside, I saw Marco in the living room, wearing an apron and serving a bowl of noodles with steam rising. He smiled tenderly, his voice gentle. "You're still the same." As thunder rumbled, Marco appeared to be comforting Eliza, embracing her from behind. I noticed Eliza stiffen momentarily, but she didn't push him away. The warm light bathed them, exuding an undeniable intimacy, as if no one could ever interfere. I met Eliza when I was 22, shortly after graduating, and joined her company. My desk was positioned directly opposite her office, and when her door was ajar, I would steal glances through the gap, admiring her face, the same face that frequently appeared in my dreams, a face that bore a 70% similarity to mine. They truly looked alike, especially when she smiled, her dimples prominent. Eventually, my coworker Olivia took notice. One day, she pressed a cold coffee against my face, startling me. "Daniel," she smiled, handing me the drink. "Don't fall for Eliza. Her heart belongs to someone else." I blinked, and she leaned in closer, sharing rumors about Eliza's first love, how Marco had left his high-paying job to support her, their dedication evident in moments like Marco bringing her food at work or rushing to her side when she fell ill during a meeting. They broke up, but Eliza still thinks about him. There's even a photo of him on her desk. I guess he hasn't moved on either. Two people who love each other but can't be together. Sounds like a novel, doesn't it? As Olivia spoke, Eliza's office door opened and her secretary approached me. "Daniel, Eliza wants to see you." Entering, Eliza was reading a document. She looked up, smiled, and two small dimples appeared at the corners of her mouth. My eyes fell on a framed photo on her desk, and Olivia's regretful expression lingered in my mind. "Daniel, will you be my boyfriend?" Eliza's words cut through my thoughts. I instinctively agreed, meeting her calm, serene gaze. My heart surged with emotion, the first time since her first love had died that I felt truly alive. Restless, I awoke the next morning with a dull headache. Reaching for my phone, I instead saw Eliza's smiling face. Her eyes curved, and the dimples at her lips were faint. My heart skipped a beat, and the lingering pain from last night's confrontation ached. Eliza gently leaned into my embrace. "Daniel," she whispered softly. The fresh scent of lily of the valley enveloped me once more. As her hand rested on my waist, she sighed. "Why don't you ever get angry? You must want something from me." I lowered my gaze and turned to hold her, resting my forehead against her heart. "I don't want your money. I don't want your love either, Eliza. I just want to see you. Just seeing you is enough." When I left her house, I noticed Marco's room was unlocked. Eliza subtly covered my view, cupping my face and planting a kiss on me. I swallowed the question I wanted to ask. The weather had shifted from partly sunny to a torrential downpour by the time I finished work. Eliza didn't come to the office that day. I messaged her, asking if she could pick me up, but my message went unanswered. As the rain intensified, I became uneasy. After over an hour without a response, I called Eliza, but a male voice answered. "Hello?" The wind made me sneeze. "Where's Eliza?" Marco hesitated before replying. "She's making ginger soup. Caught in some rain on the way back." The rain was relentless. Suppressing my growing anxiety, I calmly requested, "Can you have her come pick me up? I didn't bring an umbrella." There was a brief silence before Marco responded. "Sorry, I'm a bit scared. I'll let her come after the thunder stops." It felt as though our roles had reversed. I couldn't discern who was Eliza's true partner. "Can you pass her the phone, please?" Marco put the call on speaker and said, "Eliza, your boyfriend says he didn't bring an umbrella. Can you come pick him up?" After his shout, there was silence, followed by shuffling sounds. Marco quietly added, "Not to me, but I don't want you to go." Another awkward silence ensued. Finally, Eliza seemed to take the call. She sighed softly. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I'll come get you later. Wait for me at the office." The rainstorm dredged up painful memories, and the old scars on my arms throbbed with anguish. In the midst of the relentless downpour, I realized I couldn't wait for Eliza any longer. I waited late into the night, long after everyone had left the office, but no one came to pick me up. Instead, a familiar car pulled up at the company's entrance. The door opened, revealing Anna's face, Eliza's friend. Anna and I weren't particularly close. After getting into the car, I thanked her, shivering from the cold as I leaned against the door. We drove in silence until Anna suddenly spoke. She can't let him go. I looked up, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror, my mind still foggy. Eliza asked me to come get you. She didn't come herself because she's with Marco. Right. I didn't know how to respond. Anna chuckled softly. After years of on and off entanglements, they should have ended it long ago. Her eyes met mine again in the mirror, her red lips slightly pursed. I hesitated before asking, then why aren't they together? Because Marco has unresolved feelings, she explained. When Eliza started her business, she made enemies who took their revenge on Marco. On that day, he was delayed and couldn't see his mother one last time. He remains torn between love and hate, unable to move forward. Eliza feels guilty towards him. So, do you understand? Her tone was sharp, slicing through my thoughts. You'll never come between them, I replied quietly, gazing out at the rain-soaked streets, recalling how Eliza had drawn me in with her similarity to Marco. Shortly after starting at the company, I closed a significant deal. My colleagues joked that I should celebrate by treating everyone to dinner. Eliza happened to walk by, and the company atmosphere was jovial. One colleague boldly asked if she would join us. Eliza glanced at me, her eyes twinkling with a smile. I met her gaze, and everyone laughed, knowing Eliza typically kept personal matters private. But her smile directed at me was like a spring breeze, and she agreed to join us. Later, Eliza offered to pay for the meal, but when I reached to unlock my phone, she gently blocked my hand. No need, she softly insisted. You can treat me next time. Startled, I met her gaze again, noticing a distant haze in her eyes. She smiled mischievously, and though I recognized her gaze seeing through me to someone else, it didn't matter. Eventually, Eliza admitted that her actions that day were intentional, using the opportunity to ask me out. After we started dating, she curled up in my arms, laughing playfully like a sly fox. The moment you agreed, Daniel, I knew you wouldn't escape my grasp. The moment I saw you, I liked you. When Anna's car arrived at the building, the rain had lessened. She opened her umbrella and helped me out, walking me to the door. Oh, by the way, if you and Eliza really break up, it might be awkward to keep working at her company. You can always come to me. She handed me a business card. Are you trying to steal me away? I questioned, noticing her calm and straightforward demeanor. Your skills are exceptional. Wherever you go, people will vie to hire you. I'm just reserving a spot for you in advance. Before I could respond, Eliza's voice cut through from behind, sounding somewhat cold. He won't be going. Attempting to claim a friend's employee would be awkward, but it didn't bother me as I wasn't the one feeling uneasy. Anna simply smiled and said nothing in return before returning to her car. Eliza grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. My limbs felt numb except for the warmth where she held me. The vein at my temple pulsed painfully, my head aching. I looked at Eliza and spoke firmly. Let's break up. She immediately rejected it without hesitation. Her face darkened, brows furrowing. Is this because of Marco? He's leaving tomorrow. You don't need to do this because of him. Her voice wavered as my head pounded with pain, and I lacked the strength to argue. Just before losing consciousness, I saw a blurry figure rushing toward me. So familiar. Instinctively, I called out, Ali. Perhaps it was the rain and the biting wind, but my health had never been robust, and I soon fell into a feverish stupor. The next morning, I woke to Eliza on the phone. Sorry, something came up today. He's sick. I need to take care of him. Sleepiness enveloped me again, and I drifted back into unconsciousness. Someone had changed the towel on my forehead. When I finally awoke, my throat was parched, the towel dry, and my strength drained by the fever. I attempted to call out for Eliza, but after struggling, I couldn't produce a sound. She wasn't in the room. A glass of water sat precariously on the bedside table. I fought to sit up and reach for it, but as I did, the blanket slipped off, causing the glass to topple and my body to crash to the floor. Pain radiated through me, yet no one came to help. My fevered mind wandered until a familiar face appeared, someone resembling Eliza by about 80%, complete with the same dimples when she smiled. She smiled and called my name. Daniel, you have to live well. I wanted to respond, but my throat was too dry and cracked. Alicia, don't go, Alicia. Upon awakening, I found myself in a hospital, my fever slightly reduced. The white ceiling loomed above, 4 drips falling steadily, and Eliza, seeing me awake, poured me a glass of water. Daniel, you had a really high fever this time. Her expression was strange, but her voice remained soft. When I saw you weren't in bed, how did you end up falling? I remained silent. Her gaze shifted to my scarred hand. Daniel, your hand. Why is it covered in scars? I lowered my eyes, revealing crisscrossing scars resembling ugly worms. Avoiding the topic, I asked, "Where did you go?" I distinctly heard her say she had stayed home to care for me. She paused, then added, "Something came up at the company." I realized she had overheard everything. On Marco's first night back, he had pleaded until she agreed to accompany him to a nightclub setting today's date. "You called Marco!" Eliza froze. I stared intently, but she remained still. "Let's break up." "No." She immediately rejected it again, gripping my other hand tightly. "Daniel, we're not breaking up. And what about Marco?" My expression stayed calm. "He's getting married. His parents arranged a match for him. They're compatible, and the wedding date is set. He only returned to visit and is leaving today to marry." Eliza's expression was shadowed with sorrow, her eyes hinting at red. I felt like the antagonist in this narrative, unable to express anger. But seeing Eliza's face, all my frustration dissipated. I sighed and didn't bring it up again. After that day, Marco seemed to vanish from my life entirely. The locked room was sealed once more, as if it had never been opened. Eliza and I reverted to our previous dynamic. However, sealing something away didn't erase it completely. One day, the matching key would still unlock that door. During a business trip, I encountered Marco. I knew he didn't genuinely care about me as long as he was around Eliza. He remained her top priority, defeating me without even looking my way. While dining at a hotel, he unexpectedly appeared and sat across from me. Surprised, I greeted him. "What a coincidence." Marco smiled faintly. "It's not a coincidence. I heard about your trip from Eliza and came to see you specifically." His gaze was slightly distant. "Do you love Eliza?" I remained silent. He smiled again. "I've held on to resentment, unable to let her go, so I keep torturing both of us. Since breaking up with me, Eliza hasn't been with anyone else. When I heard she was with you, I was surprised. Then he showed me a photo of me." Marco's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Not only did she find a replacement, but she will never let go of me. I've decided I'm not letting her go. Daniel, I'm going to win her back." 4 days later, I returned from my trip. Eliza came to pick me up at the airport, bringing my favorite dessert. Feeling exhausted, I set it aside, but Eliza didn't mind. She looked down at me with a smile. "Daniel, how about we go on a trip, just the two of us? I'll give you some time off and we can go explore." Before she could finish, her phone rang, displaying Marco's name. Eliza instinctively glanced at me, and I avoided eye contact, reaching for my headphones. But she grabbed my hand first, answered the call, and put it on speaker. Marco's voice resonated. "Eliza, I'm getting married on the 8th of this month. Can you come?" Eliza locked eyes with mine, and I lowered my gaze, hiding the emotions within. After a long pause, I heard her say, "Okay." Marco's wedding was an event Eliza and I attended together. Initially, I planned to go to the office, but Eliza was unusually firm. "Daniel, you're my boyfriend, a real boyfriend, not just a second-rate replacement." I didn't question her, recognizing our mutual flaws. The wedding was vibrant, with many guests and a beautifully decorated venue. As I sat down, I overheard conversations about the bride. You don't know. Marco truly loves her. He personally designed the entire wedding and supervised every detail. I pressed my lips together, turning to meet Eliza's smiling eyes. Her smile was playful, as if she had overheard the conversations too. Daniel, what kind of wedding do you like? I hadn't considered it. Weddings and the future had always been uncertain to me. There was a time I believed that having the one I loved by my side was sufficient for a lifetime, but my perspective had shifted. Eliza didn't wait for my answer. She playfully tapped my forehead and said, "If we get married, everything will be just the way you want." "Okay, we're not getting married," I responded instinctively, wanting to voice my thoughts, but the person on stage interrupted me. The microphone crackled with static, blending with a man's emotional voice that echoed through the room. "Eliza, I don't want to marry her. If you're willing, we can leave right now." Everyone's eyes fixated on Marco. Shock, mockery, and anger weighed down upon us. My heart felt like it would burst from the pressure. The surrounding noise faded away, making breathing difficult. Marco looked at Eliza as if they were lovers separated by an endless void. Gazing into each other's eyes, he expressed his love, disregarding the past. "As long as you're willing today, we can be together. I don't want to marry anyone else. I don't want to spend my life with someone I don't love. I love you, Eliza. Let's leave together." Chaos erupted in the room as an elder tried to intervene, but the crowd surged like a tidal wave, drowning us. Eliza clenched her hand tightly, struggling to hold back something. Pain spread through my wrist, and the familiar feeling of suffocation left me speechless. Suddenly, she released her grip and sprinted towards Marco. The crowd swarmed around them, but they moved closer together. I watched as she took Marco's hand, and together they exited the throng. Marco smiled, and murmurs of anger and blame filled the air. People cursed Marco for disrupting the wedding, blamed Eliza's ex for showing up, and criticized me for failing to control my girlfriend. The pressure in my chest threatened to burst, but I remained rooted, watching them disappear. Envy welled up inside me. Eliza. Eliza held Marco's hand as they left the venue. People chased after them, but she accelerated the car, speeding away. Inside, it was silent. Marco remained speechless, his smile unwavering. Eliza didn't know where she was headed, her thoughts a tangled mess. Upon parking, she realized she had brought Marco back home. He unlocked the previously sealed room and changed his clothes. Eliza sat on the sofa, smoking a cigarette, a habit she had abandoned long ago. The curling white smoke obscured half her face, and the scent made Marco uneasy. He approached and attempted to kiss her, but she turned away, avoiding him. His lips barely touched her cheek before Marco froze. Eliza reached for her phone to make a call, but Marco's sharp eyes caught the name on the screen. Daniel. Without hesitation, he grabbed her hand, stopping her from dialing. "What are you doing, Marco?" Eliza frowned, frustration evident on her face. "I'm calling my boyfriend." Marco was stunned, the earlier joy evaporating. "Eliza, he looks like me." She met Marco's gaze without denying it. "Weren't you with him because he resembles me? You took me away? He's just a substitute. I'm back now. I'll stay by your side from now on." Eliza said, "Marco, I forgive you. Let's go back to how we were." Her expression remained emotionless, the white smoke blurring her features, but Marco could still see the coldness in her eyes. "No, Marco. I owe you. You didn't want to get married, and I stood by you. But you shouldn't have humiliated your family, your fiancé, and my boyfriend in front of everyone. Because I owe you, I chose to prioritize your feelings. But Marco, I don't love you anymore." Marco's emotions crumbled instantly, his face betraying no response. He held his phone, attempting to call Daniel, but only a mechanical voice responded, "Sorry, the number you have dialed is unavailable." Frustrated, Eliza tried to send Daniel a voice message, but saw an unread text from him saying, "We're breaking up." Overwhelmed, Eliza stood and headed for the door, determined to find Daniel. But Marco suddenly laughed. "Do you really think he loves you, Eliza? He doesn't love you at all. A man who truly loves you would never let your ex-boyfriend stay under the same roof." Eliza continued walking towards the door without turning around, while Marco's laughter morphed into tears. "You made him a substitute. So how do you know you're not someone else's substitute?" Eliza abruptly turned, grabbing Marco by the shoulders. "What do you know?" Marco looked at her, tears streaming as he laughed bitterly. "I'm not telling you, Eliza. I just want you to suffer." Eliza couldn't reach Daniel. HR informed her he had taken an extended leave. She inquired about his whereabouts, but no one seemed to know. Frustration mounted, feeling like solving a complex puzzle with an elusive final answer. On the 10th day of Daniel's leave, it was raining again. While downstairs, Eliza encountered Olivia. Olivia paused, then asked, "Eliza, did you and Daniel break up?" Eliza wanted to deny it, but words failed her. Olivia looked out at the pouring rain. After a long silence, she finally said, "You're a lot luckier than him." There was something contradictory about Daniel. The first time Eliza met him, she mistook him for Marco from the past, which initially drew her in. But over time, she recognized the stark differences between Daniel and Marco. Daniel was always kind, smiling at everyone, yet sometimes seemed like a soulless puppet when alone. However, the moment she called his name, it was as if he came alive. Even after dating, their intimacy was lacking. Daniel appeared awkward, overly restrained, and too polite. The most intimate gesture they shared was a kiss on the cheek. She thought he was just shy, but he always maintained distance, staring at her with a look akin to gazing into an endless snowfield. Too many complex emotions swirling in his eyes. The only clear emotion was an overwhelming love that crashed over her like an avalanche. She believed he loved her, unaware that they were both deceivers. She knew nothing of his past, the indifference, his avoidance of family topics, or the scars crisscrossing his body. All these were glaring red flags, yet she remained oblivious. 2 days before Daniel's leave was to end, Eliza visited the cemetery Olivia had mentioned. The staff at the entrance paused, a blank expression on their faces before blurting out a name: Alicia. Eliza frowned. A middle-aged man scratched his head apologetically. "Sorry, you must be here to visit her. Twins, I assume." Eliza didn't respond. Instead, she asked, "Why do you remember her?" He smiled. "I've been working here for 3 years. There's a guy who comes every week, rain or shine, never missing a single visit." Curious, he had once looked up who he was visiting. A girl in her 20s with dimples when she smiled. Eliza's expression darkened as she found Alicia's grave and approached it. The wind howled through the cemetery, and someone stood before Alicia's tombstone. Daniel's figure was thin and frail, resembling a living monument amidst the graves. She called out, "Daniel." As I turned around, a glaring light momentarily blurred the figure before me, almost making me think it was her. Reflecting now, it's somewhat amusing. Dead people don't come back to life. When I realized it was Eliza, I was surprised. Eliza was always composed, always smiling when facing me, her dimples eerily like Alicia's. But this time, she wasn't smiling. Her gaze fell on the black and white photo behind me. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice strained like a slow-moving stream. "Daniel, every time you look at me, what are you thinking about?" "What am I thinking about?" I replied. Every time I peeked through the door at Eliza, every time I gazed at her profile, I was trying to recreate Alicia. If she hadn't died, if she were still alive, what would it be like? I grew up in the narrow alleys of the slums. My childhood was filled with the sounds of adults gossiping in a mix of curses, the stench of rotting sewage, flies swarming everywhere, an alcoholic father, and an indifferent mother. Life and death had no clear boundaries for me. When my parents beat me nearly to unconsciousness, I heard my mother intervene, saying, "Don't really kill him." I believed it would be better if I were dead. They feared others discovering the abuse, so they left no visible marks beyond what my clothes could conceal. As I grew older, their abuse extended beyond home. They needed to assert dominance in public too, beating and scolding me in front of others, stripping away any remaining dignity. It felt like I was born to repay their debts, but I had grown accustomed to it. At 15, I stood on the edge of the fifth-floor balcony of my school, contemplating jumping as the wind howled in my ears. Alicia appeared. Someone grabbed my wrist and yanked me back. We both fell to the ground, and the rough surface scraped 2 gashes on her hand. But I remained unharmed, safe in her embrace. When she let go, she sighed in relief and scolded me, "Don't do anything stupid." But when she looked into my eyes, she fell silent, a blush spreading across her face. "Daniel, why is it you? You know me, the top student." Her voice softened. "Why were you standing on the—" I didn't answer. I simply stood up and walked away. She called after me, but I didn't turn back. I didn't know how to interact with people, preferring solitude. Alicia, though, was like an NPC in a role-playing game, one you couldn't dismiss until completing their quest. After that day, she began seeking me out. I wasn't used to socializing, but I didn't despise it either. Years of experiences had taught me to instinctively avoid people. Yet Alicia kept appearing on my quest log, eventually becoming a daily task. One day, my father returned as I was coming back from school. Reeking of alcohol, he approached me, raising his hand high before slapping me hard across the face. The people at the alley's entrance were accustomed to the sight, glancing over, whispering briefly before moving on to the next piece of gossip. I lowered my eyes as he cursed at me. "Just looking at you pisses me off." After his outburst, he stumbled away, showing no concern for me. My face throbbed with pain, a burning sensation spreading across my skin. Looking up, my eyes met Alicia's in the crowd. She stood there, stunned, raising a book as if about to call out to me. But upon seeing my face, she stopped herself. She took me to her house, where it was just her and her grandmother. Alicia dampened a towel and placed it over my face, asking, "Who did this?" "My dad." She remained silent for a moment, struggling with her words. "Does he do this to you often?" I didn't answer. Her eyes fell on my long sleeves. I zipped up my jacket. "Don't ask." A suffocating silence ensued, and I could almost hear Alicia's heartbeat, erratic and disordered. After a long pause, she suddenly grabbed my hand. "Daniel, let's run away together. After we finish the college entrance exams, we'll apply to a university far from home. Let's escape this miserable place." The cramped courtyard was filled with the damp smell of mildew, mixed with the nauseating stench of cigarettes and alcohol from outside. The setting sun cast a warm glow on Alicia's shoulders. Her smile was slightly forced, her dimples barely visible. I held the towel against my face and responded, "Okay." Alicia walked with me to and from school, using the excuse that I was helping her study so she could take me to her house. Her grandmother would prepare delicious meals for me. Alicia was intelligent, but her heart wasn't in her studies. I pushed her, and over time, her grades improved. We both took the college entrance exams. On the day the results were released, Alicia was ecstatic, dragging me all over the city, running through the streets and alleys. "Daniel, second place in the entire province. Now you can go wherever you want." We bought a small cake, the candlelight reflecting in her eyes like burning flames, igniting my heart. "Where do you want to go?" "I haven't decided yet." "Take your time thinking. When you decide, let me know, and I'll go with you." Alicia was like a fire, warm whenever I was near her, sometimes making me feel ignited as well. But before that fire could fully catch, it was extinguished. A provincial news outlet wanted to interview me, but I refused. Perhaps it was because on that day my drunken father publicly cursed me out and Alicia witnessed it. She didn't seek me afterwards. Instead, wandering through the neighborhood, The life I had lived under the cold stares of others became fodder for sensational stories. They exaggerated, cursing my parents and portraying my life as tragic. The embellished story became a topic at people's dinner tables, causing a sensation. More media outlets sniffed around, invading every aspect of my life. Suddenly, everyone pointed at me, saying, "That's the poor kid. His parents treated him horribly, yet he excelled in school. You should be more like him." My parents couldn't withstand the public scrutiny. It seemed they were finally facing their comeuppance, being insulted by others and punished at their workplaces. But scum don't repent, so all the consequences fell back on me, worse than before when they threw me out. On a rainy day, my father screamed, "Ungrateful brat, get out, and don't come back." The neighbors whispered, forming a circle to watch the spectacle, but no one offered help. 18 years of pain had piled up, reaching a tipping point, breaking the last line of defense in my heart. Then Alicia appeared. Without hesitation, she pushed through the crowd and grabbed my hand. "Daniel, it's okay. I'll take you away. Don't be afraid." "Daniel, I'm here." I fell ill. Alicia took me back to her house, which had only 2 rooms. She gave me hers and slept with her grandmother every night. I locked myself in the room, pulling the heavy curtains closed and curling up in the darkness. The old scars on my body felt like worms crawling beneath my skin, gnawing at my nerves. I couldn't bear any light. Sometimes I'd lose control, scratching my arms with sharp nails until they bled, only regaining my senses once I saw the blood, as if awakening from a nightmare. I had no idea what I had just done. Alicia would fumble in the dark to apply medicine to my wounds. Sometimes I'd stay quiet, letting her tend to me without resistance. Other times, I'd lose control, swatting the medicine out of her hands and tearing off the newly formed scabs, causing fresh blood to flow. In the pitch-black room, the only light came from the faint glow in Alicia's eyes. She suddenly rushed over and held me tightly in her arms. I was trapped in her embrace. I wanted to fight back but feared hurting her. Unable to feel the pain, I bit down hard on her shoulder. Alicia didn't utter a word. She just held me until the madness passed. The room fell into a suffocating silence. "Alicia, I began, but she interrupted me, her head buried in my neck, hands trembling slightly. I felt the wetness on my collar, like falling sparks scorching me. "It's okay. It's okay." She kept repeating it. I couldn't tell if she was comforting me or herself. "You're just sick. It's like having a cold. We'll go to the hospital, take the medicine, and follow the doctor's advice. You'll get better. You will definitely get better." In the dark room, the smell of blood mixed with the lavender-scented detergent from Alicia's clothes and the faint odor of dust lingered in the air. The body leaning against me was heavy and warm, so close that I could feel the steady beating of her heart in her chest. It was strange. When my parents beat me until I couldn't make a sound, I didn't cry. When they slapped me in front of my classmates at school, I didn't cry. When everyone pointed and whispered about me, when I was kicked out of the house, I didn't cry. But the warm liquid running down my face told me clearly, I was crying. My tears tasted salty. Instinctively, I wanted to wipe them away, but Alicia hugged me even tighter. The sound of heartbeats pounded in my ears, not just hers. I closed my eyes and wrapped my arms around her waist. "Yes, I'm just sick." The first time Alicia took me to the hospital, she was fully covered, trying to hide her identity. But I had another episode on the way. She shielded me from most stares and spoke to me gently. "Daniel, I'm here. Don't be afraid." When I regained consciousness, I met her gaze. Her almond-shaped eyes were a bit moist, not from embarrassment, but from pity. I immediately calmed down. The doctor said I needed to be hospitalized, but we couldn't afford it, so he gave me a prescription instead. Antidepressants weren't cheap. It was a long and dreary summer. Alicia left early every day for part-time jobs, ensuring I took my medicine and scheduled appointments with a therapist. She looked much darker from working under the sun, but her eyes still sparkled. I could go outside now, but I was still afraid of crowded places. One evening, when Alicia returned home, she found me in the yard, helping her grandmother pick vegetables. "Daniel, did you take your medicine today?" she asked with a smile that seemed to glow. "I did." "And a teacher from a tutoring center came by. They want me to tutor some students." She paused for a moment. "You?" I agreed. "A second-place student tutoring others. They offered me a good rate." "I'm just sick. Alicia, I'll recover." She seemed like a clock that had slowed down. After a long moment, she smiled, her dimples showing. "Yes, Daniel, you'll get better." By the end of the summer break, my condition was mostly under control. Alicia didn't go out to work as much anymore. She had saved up some money and was considering starting a small business. Her grades were good enough to get into a top-tier university, but she insisted on applying to the same school as me. Once we were in college, we met up every weekend, spending hours together on bus rides. Time always seemed to fly when we were together. Eventually, I didn't need to take medication anymore. Alicia would visit me regularly. My roommates occasionally teased me about her. When she waited for me at the school gate, one of them approached to joke, "Hey, classmate, who are you to our Daniel?" Alicia was taken aback, a slight blush rising to her ears. I stood by, watching her, feeling a strange urge to laugh. She opened her mouth and, after a moment of hesitation, answered awkwardly, "Sister, I'm his sister." My roommate lost interest, but I stood there, stunned, feeling as though my heart had skipped a beat. I was always a quick learner, with a better memory than most, always able to solve problems my peers couldn't. But there were many things I didn't understand. No one ever told me why. Even though I avoided Alicia at first, I felt happy every time she smiled at me. Even when I didn't feel sad, I would still shed tears. Why? I couldn't figure it out. Alicia hadn't walked far before she noticed something was wrong with me and asked, "What's wrong?" I stopped, looked at her, and asked directly, "Why did you lie?" She froze for a second, then smiled mischievously. "Aren't we family? I'm younger than you by a month, so you're technically my older brother." The words hit me hard, leaving me dazed. I slowly processed the meaning of family. Isn't that what we are? Alicia's face was slightly flushed, but her voice was firm. "We live together. Grandma likes you, and I like you too. Don't you like me? Like us?" "I do." I looked into her eyes. "I like Grandma, and I like Alicia. I like that Grandma made pumpkin cakes for me, called me a good kid, told me I was too skinny, and encouraged me to eat more. I like that Alicia's eyes lit up when she called my name, that she said she was always there for me, that she said, 'We're family, not parents who only yelled at or hit me, but people who smiled gently at me, even though we weren't related by blood. We're family. Alicia, you're a very, very important part of my family.'" Alicia froze momentarily, a flash of defeat crossing her face before quickly disappearing. She lightly touched my shoulder. "You are too, Daniel." At that time, I believed her. And for years after, I often thought, if I had understood earlier, if I had realized sooner what Alicia's blush meant, if I had told her then that my feelings for her were more than just familial, maybe we would have had fewer regrets. Olivia opened another bottle of wine hesitantly. Then I stood up, knocking over a bottle on the floor and stepping on the scattered cap. I have a good memory, and I remember everything clearly, except for that particular time, like a ruler with its markings deliberately erased. I didn't look at her. My gaze fell on the pre-dawn sky outside the window. After a long pause, I responded with something entirely unrelated. "Do you remember that news from 5 years ago? Right before the new year, a car crashed into pedestrians, killing 6 and injuring 12. Olivia froze for a moment, reaching for her phone to look it up. I closed my eyes as deliberately forgotten memories flooded back. The speeding car, the deafening crash, people scattering, the pain of being shoved, the sudden screams and cries, someone rushing forward to hug a child lying motionless on the street, someone else frantically running into the road, everything freezing around the growing pool of blood. Alicia bled profusely. Could a person's body contain that much blood? I didn't know. Time accelerated. The ambulance arrived and she was taken into surgery. The light on the operating room door flickered on and off repeatedly. I lost count of how many times they wheeled her in. All I remembered was the dim lights in the hospital hallway, the cold night, counting the tiles from one end to the other, sometimes more, sometimes fewer. By the end, I couldn't keep track. When the light went out for the last time, the doctor emerged, shaking his head. "You can say your final goodbyes." Entering, I saw Alicia's eyes half open, looking toward the door. The respirator covered most of her face, and the smell of blood was overpowering. When she saw me, she seemed like she wanted to smile, but even lifting her eyes was difficult. That's when I realized how much paler she had become. Gentle and quiet, like a frail princess from a European fairy tale. Alicia moved her lips, but no sound came out. I removed her respirator, and she fell silent again. She tried to lift her hand, but it trembled. I knelt beside her bed, resting my head against the edge. Alicia slowly raised her hand, gently resting it on my brow. It felt like she was stroking a precious piece of silk or trying to carve something into my bones. Her fingers traced along my brow, inch by inch, following the curve of my face. It tickled slightly. I didn't cry. I just looked at her. Alicia looked at me too, her eyes squinting as if she wanted to smile or see me more clearly. After a long time, I finally heard her call my name. "Daniel." I obediently responded. Her words came out slowly, each one taking effort as if she were chewing on shards of glass. "You have to live well, live well." But what does it mean to live well? I didn't know, so I asked her. Alicia paused. I must have asked a question too abrupt, one she hadn't fully considered. Study hard, get your diploma, find a job you like." She hesitated, something stuck in her throat. When she spoke again, it was with difficulty. "Fall in love, slowly grow old." I didn't say anything. She became more insistent. "Don't stay up late. Go to the hospital when you're sick. Don't." By the end, her voice grew quieter and quieter. "Daniel." I looked at her. Alicia looked at me. Her gaze fluctuated like a stormy sea under a dark night sky. Waves crashed but were halted by her serene expression. At the very end, her fingers stopped at the center of my brow. "Make sure you eat well, Daniel." Later, I did everything she told me to do. I studied, graduated, and found a good job. I met Eliza, she confessed her feelings to me, and we began dating. I no longer stayed up late, though I often lay awake until the middle of the night, unable to sleep. I ate properly now, no longer picky about food. I've followed everything you told me to do, Alicia. But why? Why am I still not happy? Eliza wanted an answer, but I couldn't provide one. Aren't we the same? Did you forget? When we weren't even dating, you got drunk and I took you home. You called me Marco. We do look pretty similar, don't we? Marco told me a substitute will never measure up to the real thing. Eliza, don't you feel the same way? Eliza opened her mouth as if to respond, but after a long pause, no words emerged. Marco returned, and you resolved your issues with him by running away from the wedding. A happy, perfect ending where you two finally reunite, wouldn't that be great? I stood above her, looking down. So why are you still coming to find me? She replied, It's not like that. I took him away because I felt guilty. I've already. Are you going to say you've fallen in love with me? I interrupted her. Eliza fell silent. Is this what love looks like? I asked. Is love ignoring me on a rainy day to make him ginger tea, leaving a sick person to spend time with your ex, abandoning your current boyfriend at a wedding, letting him bear the scorn and gossip of the guests alone? Eliza, you tell me, is that love? She couldn't answer. When I went to the office on Tuesday, Olivia asked where I had been and why I had taken such a long leave. Grandma caught a cold, so I stayed with her for a few extra days. Olivia patted my shoulder. You've got a lot of work piled up from your time off. Let me know if you need help. I smiled and waved the papers in my hand. No need, I'm quitting. Coincidentally, Anna had recently offered me a new opportunity. I accepted. She offered me a great deal. Grandma is getting old, and there are more things requiring money. I resigned in the morning. Eliza came looking for me in the afternoon. Olivia had just dropped me off at my new apartment when we encountered her again. When Eliza saw me, her eyes flickered, and she stubbed out her cigarette irritably. "Why did you quit? Having your ex-girlfriend as your boss can be awkward." Eliza let out a short laugh. She'd been in the business world for a long time, always calm and composed. "Really? Is it that awkward?" "Daniel," she said, meeting my gaze directly, unflinching. "Of course, it wouldn't be awkward, because I didn't care. I just didn't want to see her face. The one that looked 80% like Alicia's. Anymore." I lowered my eyes and ignored her, reaching for my keys to unlock the door. But Eliza suddenly hugged me from behind. The scent of lilies mixed with cigarette smoke enveloped me in a way that brooked no argument. Eliza buried her face in my back. Her voice was gentle. "Daniel, she's just your past. No matter how much we look alike, the only person standing in front of you now is me. I admit I initially confessed to you because you reminded me of Marco. But over time, I realized how different you are from him. What I love is you." Her voice softened, coaxing me, trying to persuade. "If you're upset because of him, I won't talk to him anymore. If you ask, I'll do it. Don't be mad at me." "All right." Eliza's breath was uneven, brushing against my ear and making it burn. I didn't respond. I pulled away from her embrace, but Eliza wouldn't let go. Our eyes met. Eliza didn't know. Before I turned 18, I didn't have a heart. Then Alicia appeared. Love took root. It sprouted from my heart, and my lifeless body began to gain flesh. Then she left, and my heart was empty again. I stared at the dimples at the corners of Eliza's mouth, my voice calm. "Eliza, you're really nothing compared to her." Eliza didn't get angry, but her face suddenly turned ashen. I didn't acknowledge her and simply opened the door to enter the house. The next day, she wasn't at the door anymore, but the ground was littered with cigarette ash. I started working at Anna's company, and my life became quite ordinary. Eliza often came to Anna's office. I could feel her gaze on me, but I pretended not to notice. One day, after finishing a work report, Anna suddenly called out to me. She pushed a beautifully wrapped gift box in my direction. I frowned slightly. "It's from Eliza." Anna cleared her throat. "She went abroad for a business trip recently. She said she came across it at an auction. This watch suits you." The lid of the box opened, revealing a shimmering watch face inside. Its brilliance was striking, clearly expensive. I didn't move. Anna smiled faintly. "She had the lock on that room at home removed not too long ago. She and Marco are completely done." "Miss Lynn," she said. I interrupted her. "She doesn't want to hear it, so I won't say more. But she's not giving up easily, Daniel. It seems she's serious this time." As I left, I ran into Eliza. Her gaze shifted from my hands to my neck. When she realized there was nothing, her eyes dimmed. Our eyes met for a brief moment, just as she was about to speak. "Daniel." I turned away and walked off quickly. That day, I encountered two people I didn't want to see. Marco was waiting for me outside after work, his face haggard, the arrogance from when I first met him gone. "Daniel," he called out. I stopped in front of him and asked, "Do you want—" His eyes drifted to my wrist, and he murmured as if in a dream, "She didn't give it to you. She said the watch was beautiful, that she wanted to buy it to apologize to you. We fought so many times. She said she loves you and only wants to marry you. She cleaned out that room, said she wanted to cut ties with me, and I told her you don't love her." "Do you know what she said?" Marco suddenly became agitated, stepping forward and grabbing my shoulders. "She didn't love you. Do you know? She loves what she can't have. It used to be you. Now it's me." Anna was a great boss. After that day, Eliza showed up less often, but her efforts never ceased. It was as if she had belatedly started pursuing me, using all kinds of gifts to win me over. I returned everything to Anna. Anna said she had tried to talk to Eliza, but Eliza wouldn't give up. Things you can't have easily become obsessions, especially for someone like Eliza. The longer she's stuck, the more likely she'll go mad. My words proved prophetic. Anna called me late one night. I often struggled with insomnia. When the call came, I hadn't fallen asleep yet, and the first thing I heard was her voice. "Daniel, I'm at a bar with Eliza right now. She's had too much to drink and is acting out. We can't control her. Can you come over? Why not call Marco?" We did, but it didn't help. I was silent for a moment before asking, "Is this an order from my boss?" Anna hesitated, then sighed softly. "Sorry. This is the last time. I promise. From now on, I'll stop her from bothering you." "All right." By the time I arrived at the bar, it was already 3 a.m. The private room reeked of alcohol. Strong liquor spilled across the floor and bottles scattered everywhere. Anna was trying to stop Eliza from drinking more, with another friend also attempting to calm her down. The moment I opened the door, Eliza instantly got up from the couch, stumbling toward me. The smell of alcohol clung to her as she fell into my arms. Eliza's head slumped heavily on my shoulder. This time, she didn't mispronounce my name. "Daniel." Her voice was hoarse, repeating my name over and over, as if trying to confirm if this was a dream or reality. I responded simply, "Yes." Immediately, she seemed delighted, hugging my waist and nuzzling her face against mine. After a while, she finally spoke. What kind of person was she? I knew she was asking about Alicia, but I didn't want to answer. When I didn't respond, Eliza let go and looked at me. Her eyes were slightly red, and for the first time, I saw a hint of brokenness on her face, a face that had spent years navigating the business world. "It's not about what you can't have." I didn't catch what she said clearly. Eliza raised her eyes to look at me. She asked again, "Alicia, what kind of person was she?" I remained silent. She suddenly grabbed my hand. "I'm just like her." "Right, I know you like this face." "It's okay, it's okay." She had drunk too much, her words jumbled. I wasn't sure if she was speaking to me or to herself. "As long as you like this face, tell me what kind of person was she, Daniel. It doesn't matter if I'm just a stand-in, as long as you stay by my side." She locked eyes with mine, speaking seriously and stubbornly, her gaze like shattered glass. "I'm begging you, Daniel, it's okay to be a stand-in. Just let me stay with you." I remained silent and pushed her away. Eliza's face, already pale and sickly, lost its last trace of color. She tried to grab my hand again, but I stepped back. "I was wrong, Eliza. You're nothing like her. Anna asked me to come here, and I did. She said this would be the last time. Eliza, if you don't want me to feel disgusted and repulsed every time I see you, then stop doing this." "Okay." Eliza's face was ashen and her body trembled. Sensing something was wrong, I was about to call for Anna when Eliza suddenly collapsed. Anna informed me that Eliza had been hospitalized over the phone. "She still wants to see you." I told her that if Eliza didn't want me to hate her, she should stop clinging to me. I didn't respond. Anna apologized again. "Sorry, I promise I won't let her bother you anymore." The wind howled through the cemetery as I laid down the flowers I had brought for Alicia. The girl in her 20s smiled in the photo. That picture was taken when I stood right in front of her. If you looked closely, you could faintly see my reflection in her eyes. Anna was still talking on the phone, but I didn't take in a single word. Only at the end did I hear her hesitantly ask, "If, and I mean if, she hadn't lied to you from the start and genuinely wanted to be with you, would things be different now?" I could hear someone else's breathing on the other end of the line. "No," I answered. The call ended. Everything suddenly became quiet. Living well doesn't necessarily mean you have to fall in love. Right, no one answered me. The girl in the photo only smiled with understanding. The sky was clear, clouds high. I lowered my gaze. Alicia, I miss you. Grandma misses you too. I took time off to go home. On the day Grandma recovered from her illness, she made me pumpkin cakes. I sat in the yard, helping pick vegetables. The sunlight outside was warm, falling softly on my body. Grandma fanned herself lazily with a palm fan. Everything was perfect, except for one person missing. It had been 5 years since Alicia passed. Grandma often urged me to bring a girlfriend home. How can you find a girlfriend if you keep running to Grandma's house during breaks? Her hair was white, but she was as kind as ever, smiling as she called me her good boy. I brushed it off with a laugh. She lightly tapped my head with her fan, then got up to fetch the pumpkin cakes from the kitchen. When I looked up, I caught sight of the sun, blinding light. Sometimes, after that high fever, I would dream of Alicia. 16 or 17-year-old Alicia holding her homework and asking me how to solve a problem, walking home with me after evening classes, grabbing my hand and saying she wanted to run away with me. When she smiled, she was like the sun, dazzling. But in the end, it was always the 21-year-old Alicia lying pale on a hospital bed, tracing my face with her fingers, repeating again and again, telling me to live well. Alicia, you forgot it was because I met you that my life got better. I snapped out of my brief daze as Grandma called me from inside the house. I wiped the tears from the corner of my eyes and walked in, as if I had never cried. A lifetime is long, very long. The next few decades are just a drawn-out sentence. The cold moon and warm sun slowly wore away at life.